Hi everyone, I'm Kevin and this is HFX by Bike, a YouTube channel all about getting around Halifax by bike, and occasionally about saving you money. Different ways of getting around are always going to be in competition with one another in terms of cost and convenience, and it's a reasonable goal for a city to try to enable more people to be less dependent on cars in their daily lives. A while ago, I made a video about a short 5-kilometer trip on the peninsula by bike, car, and transit, and ran through the numbers of how long each took and what all of the associated costs were. Of course, the value out of each mode is going to vary based on things like the trip length, where you're going, and when. Since the feedback on the first video was positive, I'll be making some more based on the same concept, and try to show where each mode can excel or come up short. In today's video, I'll be making a rush hour trip from the same downtown start point on Spring Garden Road and heading towards Access Nova Scotia and Bears Lake. The distance for this trip varies a bit by mode. The car ends up taking the most direct path, traveling 9 kilometers. Transit will follow a 9.7 kilometer long route, and the bike will mostly stick to the bike infrastructure network and travel 11.7 kilometers. With all that out of the way, let's just get started. The first thing of note is that I've changed the layout of this type of video. Instead of flipping between each of the modes, I have them laid out as a split screen. The car on the top left, the bike on the top right, transit in the bottom left, and a helpful mini-map on the bottom right. I think this will make it a little easier to keep track of what's going on as these types of trips get longer. The second thing you might notice is that only the transit feed is playing, and that's because for this trip, transit gets to leave about 6 minutes early. Normally I start each of the trips at 5 p.m. sharp, but I'm going to allow transit to start early, and that's because there's an express bus I can catch if I run, and leave just a little early. If you're using transit as your main way of getting around, you're probably structuring your day around the transit schedule at least a little bit, so I think this is a pretty reasonable compromise. The extra time will still count towards the total trip time for transit. I'll fast forward to 5 p.m. so that all the different modes can get started in earnest. Okay, so it's 5 o'clock, and the first thing you might notice is that on the transit run, the bus hasn't arrived yet. It's running about 5 minutes late, so far. The car is leaving Spring Garden Place. I'm modeling all the costs based on the 2021 Honda Civic, just like the first video. The upfront cost of buying the car and financing it is about $14.30 per day. For the bike, I'm going to model everything based on my actual mid-range e-bike, which runs a daily financing cost of about $1 if you scale it over the same time period. Both the car and the bike are just leaving Spring Garden Place now, and for the transit run, I'm actually just around the corner waiting for the bus. By 5:03, both the car and the bike are at or approaching South Park and Sackville intersection, but from different directions. In addition to the upfront cost, both the personal vehicles depreciate in value over time. According to the CAA calculator, this model of car loses about $4.10 per day in resale value. There's a bit less data for the bike, but scaled, it would be about 65 cents per day. And I'm still waiting for the bus on Spring Garden. At 5:06, the car is making its way west on Jubilee and starting to encounter some light traffic. You have to insure your car in order to drive it around, due to the potential damage it can cause to basically everything else in the environment. This runs you about $1,000 per year, or $2.40 per day with this model of car. Actual rates will vary based on your driving history, of course. The bike is just entering the painted lanes on Windsor Street. Bikes don't have to be insured for an assortment of practical reasons. The main one is that there's no vehicle identification system across the hundreds of different manufacturers of bikes, and so reliably linking insurance to a specific bike would just be a logistical nightmare. Besides that, they have much lower capacity to cause property damage or physical harm to others, and so insuring against that outcome is mostly just not worthwhile for anyone. But it's pretty common to have them insured against theft, especially for e-bikes. That runs me about 15 cents per day. And while I've been talking, the buses arrived at Spring Garden, running about 12 minutes late. The only financial cost to using transit is the fare, but as a regular user, I have a monthly pass, so for $2.70 per day, I get unlimited rides. It's now 5:10 and all of the modes are underway. The car is sitting in heavy traffic, about to make a left turn from Connaught onto Quinpool. Cars require pretty regular maintenance. The amount is going to vary based on how much you drive and under what conditions, but the estimated average for this model of car is going to be about $1.78 in maintenance costs daily, on average. The bike is moving west down Almond Street in light to moderate traffic. Bikes also require regular maintenance, and after owning one for a year, I'd say it works out to about 27 cents per day on average, or $100 per year, give or take. The bus is on Summer Street, just passing Jubilee in moderate traffic. Fast forward to 5:15 and the car is stuck in traffic on Quinpool on approach to the Armdale roundabout. It's going to vary based on where you park, but you're going to have to pay for parking if you drive to work. At my office, the monthly pass is going to run about $230 a month, or $7.30 per day. I'll just assume that parking at home is free, although it may or may not be based on it being an apartment or condo. The bike is walking across the Bears Road multi-use path rail cut crossing. Yes, there's a part of the bike network that requires you to walk. No, that's not good. Parking is basically always free for bikes when it's available. The bus is making its way down Roby Street along the Commons. By 5:20, the car is making its way up St. Margaret's Bay Road, nearing the Highway 103 interchange. Once past the roundabout, there's little meaningful traffic. The bike is making its way down the Channel Lakes Trail and is currently crossing at Springvale. The bus is sitting in moderate traffic at the intersection of Connaught and Chebucto. The car arrives first at Access Nova Scotia at 5:24 p.m. The route taken was about 8.5 kilometers, giving it an average speed of 21.3 kilometers per hour. The fuel cost for this trip at current rates would be about 97 cents. It's new at the time of editing, so I'll throw in an extra 9 cents for the federal carbon tax. That brings the total cost of the car trip to $30.94. The bike is continuing to make its way down the Channel Lakes Trail, currently approaching the Dunbrack Greenway. The bus is moving through the Armdale roundabout. The bus arrives at the stop at 5:31. Unfortunately, it's just an unpaved shoulder at the side of the road. It's on foot for the rest of the way from here. At the same time, the bike is making its turn off of the trail onto Horseshoe Lake Drive for the final approach to Access Nova Scotia. The bike arrives at Access Nova Scotia at 5:33. After traveling 11.7 kilometers, the bike trip had an average speed of 21.3 kilometers per hour. The cost to charge the bike for this trip would probably round up to about 2 cents, and generally wouldn't be impacted by the carbon tax. The total cost of the bike trip was about $2.09. For the transit run, I'm still walking in the dirt next to high-speed traffic. Fun! I arrive at Access Nova Scotia for my transit run at 5:40, just after traveling for about 10 kilometers. If you start counting from the time I left for the bus, the average speed was 12.6 kilometers per hour, but it goes to 17.1 if you only count the time since I boarded the bus. The total cost just comes down to my fare, which was $2.70. The travel times follow a lot of the same basic patterns as the first video. The personal vehicles arrived somewhat faster than transit, although the gap isn't quite as noticeable as the first time, just because transit had a better connection for this type of trip. The car arrived first, in large part due to being a personal vehicle, and so being able to leave right at the start, and by being able to take the most direct path to the destination. There was some traffic on approach to the Armadale roundabout, but it evaporated completely past that point. The bike also got to leave immediately, but didn't get the benefit of direct pathing. Most cyclists are going to find the Armadale roundabout intimidating during rush hour, given its status as one of the most dangerous parts of the city to bike through. So, despite traveling a similar average speed as the car, the bike arrived just 9 minutes later, because it has to take a much more circuitous route. The transit option lacked any of the advantages of the personal vehicles, and despite having an early start, was the last to leave the downtown starting area. The bus being late by 12 minutes in the beginning meant that it was never going to have a competitive trip time. If it had been on schedule, the bus actually would have arrived just shortly after the car, but before the bike. As large as the gaps in arrival time seem, the big difference was actually in cost. The car cost more than 10 times as much to operate as either the bike or the transit options. About 3/4 of the cost of the car trip were fixed and associated with ownership rather than use, with the remainder being things like parking and fuel costs. All of these are things that you pay for even if you don't use the car. There are ways of getting all of the benefits of using a car without committing to the cost of owning one. This trip could have been accomplished by using something like a car share program, which would have cost, depending on the program, $15.50 for this kind of trip, or by using a cab or an Uber, which would have been closer to $21.60. If you use your bike or transit for routine trips where it's convenient, then you can save enough money that using options like car shares or taxis end up saving you money, even in the short term. Just something to think about if you find yourself pinched by the cost of living. That's all I've got for this week. If this kind of thing interests you, please like and subscribe. If you have any fun ideas for rush hour trip comparisons, let me know and I'll try to add it to the schedule. As always, thanks for watching and see you next time.